Today we're going to talk about population growth and the quest for survival. So this basically means how do populations grow and change over time, and how do individuals fight for survival in an ecosystem. So the two questions we're looking at focusing on today are what factors affect population growth, so what factors make a population bigger and smaller, and we're also looking at how do the populations change over time in terms of number, amount, and how they interact. So take a moment to review. What is a population? A population is a group of the same species within an area. For example, a group of humans are the same population in Gilroy. So from that, there are three ways to describe populations. The first is their size, and their size has to do with how big or how small they are. The density is how many are in a certain area, and third is dispersion. As for size, they can be really big, hundreds and thousands, or really small, maybe only 3 people in the entire population, or 3 organisms, 3 plants. Density has to do with how closely packed the organisms are per area. So for example, they can be really dense, such as this side, where they're all packed into one area, or loose, such as over here, where they're sprinkled around all over the place. Dispersion has to do with where they're found in that area. For example, an even dispersion has to do with them being even distances apart. They're equidistant. They're equal in terms of being apart from each other. Aggregated means they're clumped. They're in 2 distinct areas in this example. Random means there's some difference between even and aggregate. For example, these 2 individuals are next to each other, while these are really far apart, but there's no kind of set distance for how they're dispersed. So that was 3 ways that you can describe a population. Now I'm going to talk about how populations grow. So there's mainly 2 phases of populational growth: exponential growth, which is our first phase down here, and our second phase, logistical growth, which is our second phase out here. So in the beginning, there's exponential growth, which is really rapid. You can see this quick growth. If this is the change in time and the number of population up here, there's really rapid growth in the exponential phase. This is in contrast to logistical growth, which is we kind of level off. L for logistical, and leveling off. We level out at this area called the carrying capacity, and the carrying capacity is how much an area can support in terms of population. The carrying capacity is set by things like the amount of resources, the amount of water, and other resources specific to that area. That was kind of general about how populations grow. They're affected by a couple different factors, and here's some examples of how they grow, what affects them. So first off, there's some population-dependent factors, such as sickness and resources. So as your population gets bigger, sickness and resources have a bigger impact. If there's only 2 people in your population, then sickness might not be such a big deal. You just stay away from the person who's sick. Resources, there's enough food to go around. However, as there are more and more people, hundreds and hundreds of people, resources become more important. It's less likely that you're going to get that pizza you want because 800 other people want it. In contrast, there's independent factors. They're independent of the population size. So, for example, if there's a storm or an earthquake, both of these would affect a population just as bad as if there was 100 people versus 2. I also want to talk about some factors that affect population size in terms of increasing it and decreasing it. So why don't you take a moment and brainstorm, scribble down some things that you think might increase the population size and things that might decrease the population size. So here are some examples of things that would increase your population size. Would be birth and immigration, meaning individuals coming into the population. In contrast, to decrease your population size, you could have things like death and emigration, or individuals exiting your population. I took some time to explain to you how populations grow and how we can track their growth. I also want to talk to you about some things that populations do to survive. So how do populations maintain themselves? They can do things such as adaptations. Adaptations are adjustments made to survive. For example, in a predator and prey relationship, prey over time might develop ways to escape predators, and predators over time may develop ways to be able to better catch prey. And this is a way that we see populations interact. So we'll see that in the lab this week on how there's different factors that affect whether or not a population will survive. And we'll get into some of the specifics, such as hunting and cooperativity next week, but I just want to make sure I introduce the idea of adaptations and what it might mean for a population to survive in their quest for survival and passing on their genes. Lastly, I just wanted to wrap up with a couple factors that affect survival in general. So here's an assorted list, kind of off the top of my head. So earlier I talked about the size of population. So a population is more likely to survive the bigger a population you have. You'll read about this in your textbook about cheetahs and inbreeding. Diseases really can affect survival. If there's a sudden disease that comes along that can really wipe it out, that's something that's going on with the honeybees. Resource availability is the thing we'll test in the lab, whether or not there's predators. So, for example, in Australia, the rabbits were able to take over completely and their populations exploded because there were no predators. The fit with the environment really matters, and we'll talk about that next semester in evolution. but just want to plant the seed. The fit of the environment makes a huge difference whether or not something will survive. And lastly, the rate of reproduction. Bacteria have a huge rate of reproduction. They're very quick. They'll double within 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and that makes it a lot easier for them to survive compared to humans and maybe even elephants. It takes 9 minutes to get another 9 months to get another individual, versus 9 minutes to maybe quadruple your population. So these are all factors that really can affect your survival and whether or not you'll make it to the next generation. So as always, it's always good to have a summary. So in summary, we know that populations are described by their number of individuals and how the number of individuals are found, whether they're dispersed, tightly found, or dense. We also know that population size is affected by many factors. We've listed a whole ton here today, ranging from diseases to growth to birth to immigration, that all affect whether or not you'll have a big population or a small population and how that population changes over time. Lastly, we touched on the idea that populations grow rapidly, but are definitely limited by their environment due to carrying capacity and what is around them, due to interactions with others. So that's our summary for today of populations and how populations grow. So feel free to text me if you have any questions, refer to your textbook, take a look at the pictures, look stuff up. We'll be looking at some simulations. We'll be talking about how populations grow in simulated populations, specifically in deer. So I look forward to seeing you in class. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to text me or Google me. I'm here for you. So keep growing, keep living. Have a good one. Take care.